I'm in a 100-year-old haunted house where the cool air just does not stay inside. So, hello everyone in this YouTube world. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I will be covering one of the most, I would say, interesting specials Disney Channel has ever done, and that is Wish God Amiss Weekend, where Cory in the House, The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and Hannah Montana all wish upon the same shooting star. Other than that, there's nothing really threading them together, but with this special, it's a kind of crossover. Disney Channel really was kind of taking on ideas prevalent in the 90s. Like, there was episodes of NBC sitcoms where there was a blackout between friends, Mad About You, etc. I think it was ABC. They did a couple of like crossover nights, like Boy Meets World was affected by a time ball from the Sabrina the Teenage Witch Cat. It's a lot of different interesting sort of ways to like thread together different television sitcoms. Now in this video, I will be breaking down each episode in the order that it aired on TV. So I'll be starting off with Cory in the House, Season 1, Episode 17, called Gone Wishing. And I just want to say Cory in the House is a really great form of a spin-off. It puts Cory into a new and interesting setting that we've never actually really seen before in a sitcom. The whole Disney Channel format and the That's So Raven kind of humor and vibe, and we're gonna put it in the White House. It is such a shame that Cory in the House only aired for 2 seasons, because I would have loved to see where the show would have progressed if we got more seasons. And I just want to say the theme song pops off. This episode brings up a lot of negative qualities about Cory Baxter's character. Like, it seems he's very selfish in this episode, which is kind of sad because I kind of wish we saw some character progression with Cory going from San Francisco to the White House. But alas, he's still kind of like charismatic type of dude. I just want to say Madison Pettis is probably one of the most underrated Disney actresses of all time. She really carries this episode. Not saying that Kyle Massey doesn't, but she definitely brings a lot of fresh air. And I haven't really watched this episode even back in the day. I think I've only watched this episode once before. It's also not one of my favorites, I will say that. It's a kind of weird sort of vibe because you kind of get that normal Cory in the House episode, and then in the middle of it, it just instantly cuts to this kind of vision or dream that Cory is having where he is the president of the United States and he's not really taking responsibility for what exactly is happening around him, and that ends up biting him in the butt later. There's something to deal with like robots taking over the world that are like consuming people. It's a weird concept. I just didn't really like it. I don't really like watching TV show episodes that aren't canonical to what the series is about. I like to see natural growth and progression. The writers definitely have fun with this episode. I just want to say Jason Dolley is also an underrated Disney star. He was in so many Disney Channel original movies and series that I think he definitely earns, like, if there was ever a Disney Channel Hall of Fame, he deserves to be in that because of the amount of work that man has put into the Disney Channel. And you know, I think it's really cool that they kind of made it a vision because it kind of ties it back to That's So Raven. This is just a note for me. I kind of wish Cory had psychic visions whenever he started going to the White House. I think it would have been really cool if like Cory Baxter just had visions of things that are going to happen in this country and he could just have these like outlandish moments with the president of the United States. I think it would be a really interesting idea for the spinoff, but granted, the spinoff is definitely very iconic. I know a lot of people love it. This episode wasn't really it for me. It could be the fact that I'm not as nostalgic towards Cory in the House because I didn't really watch that as much growing up. That's kind of all I really have to say about that episode. Now we're gonna move on to The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Season 3, Episode 4, called Super Twin. They see a shooting star in the sky and they wish to be superheroes or have superpowers. And then instead of flashing directly to this vision, they wake up the next morning and they all of a sudden have these superpowers. But the weird thing about this episode is that all the characters are still acting pretty normal with the exception of, I think, 1 or 2 characters. So Mr. Mosby is essentially the villain villain in this episode, and I think that's really funny. This episode really kind of felt like the Fairly Odd Parents, and the only way I could describe it is feels so out of left field. The writers probably had a marvelous time writing this episode. The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody had the funniest side characters. This episode gave off a lot of similar vibes to the Nickelodeon show The Thundermans, and I don't know if you guys have seen The Thundermans. It's pretty much about a family of superheroes who come and live in the real world, and they have to manage life being superheroes but also trying to be mortals. Not saying that Nickelodeon stole from Disney, but this is definitely an instance where I'm like, okay, Nickelodeon, I see what you did with Disney. I feel like in the Sweet Life series, we should have seen more interactions with Esteban and Arwen, because there were several moments where they were under Mosby's power together, and I felt like that was just a very strong dynamic. Let's go ahead and start a ship between Arwen and Esteban. Starwin! And a fun fact is, Arwen was actually supposed to have his own spin-off. I think they were already planning to do the Sweet Life on Deck, because there was a season 3 episode where they did go on the SS Tipton, but there was also a Arwen spinoff with Selena Gomez in it. I think it's really interesting to know about these Disney Channel sitcoms that could have been. Okay, I just went on a big long tangent. I just cringed so hard at Zack and Cody's superhero names. Zack's name was Quick Guy and Cody's name was Brain Man. There was just a cutaway line where apparently Mr. Tipton was held for ransom and London was there to witness it, and it was extremely dark. And I was like, did she really just say her dad was held for ransom? Also, seeing Mr. Mosby as a baby was just not a sight I really wanted to see, but it was something in this episode. And Carrie definitely did the line, "What comes with great power comes great responsibility." She said something along those lines, and I was just like, are we about to kill off Carrie Martin in this episode? Are we gonna go down that line? So once they kind of snap out of it, we figure out that this was all Zack's dream, and it's kind of interesting because it was more so everything from Zack's perspective, and I think that was a really interesting angle to go with this episode, because if it was Cody's angle, I don't think the episode would have been as out there and outlandish. I think it would have been very structured. But the way Zack's imagination worked and the way he perceived the people at the Tipton was a lot different. And this was an episode that wasn't canonically connected with any of the other episodes. So it's a very interesting life lesson to be like, careful what you wish for. I, however, believe in manifestations, positive vibes, positive energies. Okay, so now the final episode I'm going to talk about, it's probably one of my favorites. It's the episode I've rewatched the most. Like I said earlier, the Cory in the House, Sweet Life episodes, I didn't really watch those as much growing up because they didn't really affect the main plot of the entire series. So the Hannah Montana episode, season 2, episode 12, When You Wish You Were a Star, it kind of takes Miley into a new sort of perspective on living her double life. And I think that's what makes this episode a really strong Hannah Montana episode. We saw the life where Miley Stewart didn't exist, and it was just Hannah Montana all the time, and that is a very interesting plot, and it works in the Hannah Montana world. But we get to see her really kind of struggle being a superstar 24/7, hence why she does the double life. We kind of understand, okay, this is why Miley does the double life, because sometimes the superstar life is just too much for her, and we see that, and we see how her being Hannah Montana all the time actually affects the people she loves, and that is a very strong and interesting just sort of message to share to the audience, because Jackson becomes a houseless person, and that's really sad. Lily become part of the Amber and Ashley friend group. Rico and Oliver are a part of a, I don't know, they're just trying to make a quick buck off of Hannah Montana by doing tours of her house, which is kind of weird and low-key an invasion of privacy. But this episode started off with an underrated bop. Gotta put on my own blue jeans. That song is underrated. A lot of the Hannah Montana songs are very underrated. This episode also had a very interesting guest star. We had Jesse McCartney. I don't want another pretty face. I don't want just anyone to hold. Ooh, whoa, oh, ooh, whoa, 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 yeah. Miley rejects Jesse McCartney pretty much, and she feels very bad for Jesse because essentially, her life as Miley has taken over what she wants to do as Hannah Montana, and this is when she kind of loses focus for why she is Miley. Then we get to the shooting star scene we've seen in all of the rest of the episodes, and I think this is a really interesting full circle kind of scene because it's a scene between Miley and Lily, and she just outwardly states, I wish I could be Hannah all the time. And then she has the same sort of experience Zack does. She wakes up the next morning and the wig is just her hair. Her life is completely different and she actually starts loving it. However, there are shifts in the episode where her life as Hannah Montana all the time has cracks in it. The best of both worlds, the beat of that song hits so hard. There's a lot of things in these childhood TV shows where I look at as an adult. So there's one article of clothing I saw in this episode that I absolutely love. So there was this Hannah Montana jacket that her homeschool teacher was wearing, and I was just like, I want that jacket, or just a colorful Hannah Montana jacket. So if anyone knows where I can find a colorful Hannah Montana jacket, let me know down in the comments because I will definitely spend some adult money on that. Also, how old was Jesse McCartney? And I think this episode really just goes to show how important the friendships of Oliver and Lily are to Miley, because they are essentially what drives her to be her normal life. Like, they really help ground her and bring her back to real life, or else she's just gonna have this flashy, glamorous life that's just full of greatness, but she won't actually feel whole inside. And in a sense, this episode goes to show how her friends and her loved ones make her feel whole. Like, it wasn't money or superstardom or being famous that made her happy. It was the people who she surrounded herself with. I also hate the stepmom. I hate the stepmom. I also want some Loco Hot Cocoa. One of the funniest and most iconic moments of the episode is when Miley does kind of the reverse Hannah, where she puts on a Miley wig on Hannah and she does that double life, but she reverses it. And I think that's a really awesome moment because she genuinely was trying to look at Lily and be like, look at me. I know deep down you're still there. Low-key part of me got a little bit, emotional because it reminded me a lot of, what I'm going through currently. My grandma has been suffering from dementia from the last couple of years, and she was the woman who raised me. I didn't really have a mom there with me whenever I grew up. So just seeing her plead with Lily, it just really goes to show how much Miley missed, just being herself. And that's one thing that felt really just hit close to home with me is I feel so authentically myself because of my grandma and because of the journey she's put me through and the way she raised me and all the opportunities and all the amazing things she has offered me in my life. And I will forever be grateful for that. It was great because Hannah was able to go back to that moment with Lily on the shooting star, and she's like, no, I want my life exactly where it is, right here next to Lily, with my dad and Jackson living with me. And I just think that's just a very wholesome moment. This episode has a lot of heart to it, and I think that's what makes it a really great Hannah Montana episode, because not only do you get to see the scenario of what it actually would be like if Hannah Montana was all the time, and Miley isn't Hannah Montana. Like, Hannah Montana is a facade she puts on. She is really this girl from Tennessee, and trust me, Hannah Montana is one of my favorite shows of all time. If there's one Disney Channel show that I would say defined my childhood, it would be Hannah Montana. I just felt like she was my best friend, and she really helped me throughout my childhood. And just whenever I would turn on my TV and I would watch Hannah Montana, I felt like I was seen and I was heard. And in a brief moment, I felt like I was myself when I watched Hannah Montana. I know that's very weird. Again, just to say, this is such a strong Hannah Montana episode. I think this is the point where she starts seeing the cracks in the persona because she doesn't actually want to live the superstar life. I think this is a very interesting plot point that will shrink through the rest of the series that is brought forward in this episode. I think that also goes to show why Miley Cyrus did Hannah Montana is because A, she was just a young actress trying to make it into the Hollywood scene, and B, Hannah Montana spoke volumes to its audience. It spoke volumes to me. It spoke volumes to a lot of people. Like, a lot of people I talk about, there's a lot of conversations I can have with people about Disney Channel, but the conversation I have the most is usually something to do with Hannah Montana. And then there actually was a full-fledged, well, I wouldn't say full-fledged, but there was a full-fledged Hannah Montana Cory in the House crossover episode where Cory in the House characters appeared on Hannah Montana. So this is just a really kind of fun theory and idea. So we're going to do a little bit of a theory time. I low-key think that, okay, this is just going to be an out-of-pocket. I feel like it would be interesting if the shooting star was low-key the same night the Russos got their wizard powers. I know that's way outlandish, but that would just be a cool concept to be like, oh, that's how the wizards get involved, because this is the first time we really see any sort of magic or sudden shift in the universe from the main cast of Disney Channel sitcoms, and I just think that would be really cool. Now, for this special event, I would give it a 6 out of 10. The Cory in the House and Sweet Life episodes don't really do that much for me. They're not really canonically fit in with the rest of the episodes. You could easily skip these episodes and go on with the series. The Hannah Montana episode is a little bit more important because it is Miley realizing that the Hannah Montana persona doesn't always fit for her. And it's kind of interesting because in both specials that I've covered, the Hannah Montana episodes are really strong, even though they don't really have any connectivity to the rest of the episode. Oh, I would also like to make a fact correction from my last video. I just saw a video where Allison Stoner did an interview with Christy Carlson Romano, and if you don't know who that is, Romano was the voice of Kim Possible, and she also starred in the Even Stevens TV show and movie. But pretty much Allison Stoner was talking about the spin-off that was supposed to come from That's So Raven, and she said the title, so I'm pretty sure the title of that spin-off was supposed to be called Happy Days, but she mentioned that the reason why the spin-off never really picked up was because it actually competed with Hannah Montana. I thought that the Happy Days was supposed to be Hannah Montana, but really it was in competition because they had very, very similar premises. All in all, they were still trying to appeal to that musical sort of audience, like they were trying to bring in with the Cheetah Girls, and they were also trying to bring in High School Musical. They were trying to sell Hannah Montana, and that makes total sense. This video is just honestly about underrated Disney actors. I think that's all I'm gonna say for this video. So in the next video, I will be taking a break from the Disney Channel. I know, we'll be going back. Trust me, we will be coming back. We will be doing more Disney Channel, but I kind of want to switch over networks to Nickelodeon. I will be covering probably one of the most anticipated crossovers of my childhood. This was a crossover I had waited. It was probably the first television episode I really sat on for months anticipating the release on, and that is when iCarly and Victorious came together for iParty with Victorious, a very iconic crossover episode. I have a lot to say about it and just how pivotal the episode was for my childhood. And if you guys are interested in that, make sure you stay tuned for that. Make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at TyTyWhitehead. I will see you all in another video, and don't forget to keep on dreaming, keep on manifesting, keep on having positive vibes and affirmation.